Once upon a time, in the peaceful village of Ilorin, Nigeria, lived a young couple who seemed to have a perfect love story. Sunday and Tolulope were the envy of everyone who saw them together. They were always smiling, holding hands, and laughing. Their love was like a bright light in the village, and people often said, "Look at Sunday and Tolulope. They are a match made in heaven." Sunday and Tolulope met when they were children. They played together, went to the same school, and grew up side by side. Their friendship blossomed into love, and soon, they were inseparable. They have their favorite place where they meet, talking about their dreams and future. Tolulope loved Sunday's caring nature, and Sunday adored Tolulope's kindness and gentle spirit. One sunny afternoon, Sunday decided it was time to take their relationship to the next level. He took Tolulope to their favorite spot in the village, got down on one knee, and asked, "Tolulope, will you marry me?" Tears of joy filled Tolulope's eyes as she nodded and said, "Yes, Sunday, I will marry you." The villagers, who had followed them secretly, erupted in cheers and clapped, celebrating the happy moment. Their wedding was the biggest event Ilorin had seen in years. Everyone came to witness their union. The ceremony was filled with joy, music, and dancing. Sunday looked at Tolulope with so much love and affection that people couldn't help but smile. They danced late into the night, and as they left for their new home, the villagers wished them a lifetime of happiness. But behind the walls of their home, things began to change. At first, it was small things. Sunday would get upset over trivial matters and raise his voice. Tolulope was confused but thought it was just the stress of adjusting to married life. However, as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Sunday's temper grew worse. One evening, Tolulope accidentally spilled water on the floor. Sunday snapped, "Can't you do anything right?" His words were sharp, and before she could apologize, he slapped her. Tolulope was stunned. She couldn't believe the man she loved could do such a thing. She cried herself to sleep that night, hoping it was just a one-time incident. But it wasn't. Sunday's outbursts became more frequent. He would push her, call her names, and sometimes hit her. Tolulope was trapped in a nightmare. She couldn't understand why Sunday, who had once been so loving and kind, was now so cruel. She tried to talk to him, to understand what had changed, but Sunday always brushed her off, saying she was too sensitive. When they were outside or with friends, Sunday was the perfect husband. He held her hand, smiled, and spoke sweetly to her. People continued to admire them, thinking they were the happiest couple. Tolulope felt like she was living two lives, one in public where everything seemed perfect, and one at home where she was miserable. Tolulope's friends began to notice the bruises on her arms and face. Folake, her closest friend, asked one day, "Tolulope, what happened? You have a bruise on your cheek." Tolulope quickly covered it with her hand and forced a smile. "Oh, it's nothing. I bumped into the door," she lied. Folake looked concerned but didn't press further. Tolulope became good at hiding her pain. She wore long sleeves to cover the bruises and avoided talking about her home life. She didn't want to believe that Sunday, the man she loved, was capable of such cruelty. She hoped and prayed that he would change. One day, Tolulope discovered she was pregnant. She was overjoyed and hoped the baby would bring a positive change in Sunday. She told him the news with a big smile, expecting him to be as happy as she was. Instead, Sunday looked annoyed. "A baby? Now, we can't afford this," he grumbled. Tolulope's heart sank, but she tried to stay positive. She believed that once the baby arrived, Sunday would soften and become the loving husband he once was. As Tolulope's pregnancy progressed, Sunday's behavior worsened. He would shout at her for the smallest things, and the physical abuse continued. Tolulope tried to protect her unborn child, enduring the pain silently. She didn't tell anyone about the abuse. She was too ashamed and afraid. When their son, Tunde, was born, Tolulope felt a glimmer of hope. Tunde was a beautiful, healthy baby, and Tolulope loved him with all her heart. For a brief moment, Sunday seemed happy too. He held Tunde and smiled, and Tolulope thought things might finally get better. But the change was short-lived. Sunday's temper returned, and he resumed his abusive ways. He would shout and hit Tolulope, even in front of Tunde. Tolulope tried to shield her son from the violence, but it was impossible. Tunde would often cry, sensing his mother's distress. Years passed, and Tunde grew older. He was a bright and curious child who loved his mother dearly. Tolulope tried to create a happy environment for him, despite the pain she was enduring. She read him stories, played games, and did everything she could to make him smile. But the shadow of Sunday's abuse loomed over their lives. One day, Tolulope found out she was pregnant again. She was filled with mixed emotions. She loved her children, but she was terrified of bringing another child into such a violent environment. She hoped against hope that this time, things would be different. But they weren't. Sunday's anger seemed to grow with Tolulope's pregnancy. He would push her, even when her belly was big with their second child. Tolulope tried to protect her unborn baby, but she was powerless against Sunday's rage. One fateful night, after a terrible argument, Sunday hit Tolulope so hard that she fell and didn't get up. Tolulope's death shocked the village. People couldn't believe that the loving Sunday could do such a thing. The case went to court, and little Tunde stood bravely in front of the judge. "My father hurt my mother," he said, his small voice filled with sadness. He would shout and hit her, and she would cry. The court listened to Tunde and the evidence. Tunde stood in the courtroom, his small frame dwarfed by the imposing surroundings. His testimony had sealed his father's fate, and Sunday was sentenced to life imprisonment. The village of Ilorin, once filled with admiration for Sunday and Tolulope, was now a place of whispers and sorrow. Tunde was taken in by his grandmother, Margaret. She lived in a small house on the outskirts of the village, surrounded by tall trees and blooming flowers. Margaret was a kind and strong woman who had always been there for Tolulope. She vowed to give Tunde the love and care his mother had always wanted for him. Life with Margaret was different. The house was filled with warmth and laughter, a stark contrast to the cold and violent home Tunde had known. Margaret told him stories of his mother, emphasizing her kindness, strength, and the love she had for him. "Your mother was a brave woman, Tunde," she would say, holding him close. "She loved you more than anything." As Tunde grew older, he became more aware of the past. The whispers of the villagers reached his ears, and he learned about the tragic end of his mother and the cruelty of his father. It filled him with a mix of sadness and anger. He vowed to make something of himself, to honor his mother's memory and prove that he was not defined by his father's actions. School became Tunde's refuge. He was a bright student, excelling in his studies and earning the respect of his teachers and classmates. Despite the shadows of his past, he found joy in learning and a sense of purpose. He made friends, although he was careful about who he let into his life. Trust didn't come easily to him. One of his closest friends was Yusuf, a cheerful and compassionate boy who always had a smile on his face. Yusuf knew about Tunde's past but never judged him for it. Instead, he offered unwavering support. "We're like brothers, Tunde," Yusuf would say. "No matter what happens, we've got each other's backs." Tunde's passion for learning led him to dream of becoming a doctor. He wanted to help others, to heal the wounds that couldn't be seen. His determination was foiled by the memory of his mother and the promise he had made to himself. Margaret supported his dreams wholeheartedly, doing everything she could to provide for his education. But life wasn't without its challenges. The scars of his past haunted Tunde. Nightmares of his father's rage and his mother's cries would wake him in the middle of the night. Margaret would sit by his bedside, comforting him with soothing words and gentle songs. "You are stronger than your fears, Tunde," she would whisper. "You have the heart of a warrior." He faced the challenge of balancing his studies with the emotional weight he carried. There were moments when he felt overwhelmed, moments when he questioned whether he could escape the shadow of his father's actions. But each time he faltered, he remembered his mother's face, her love, and her strength. Yusuf and other friends became his pillars of support. They encouraged him, stood by him during difficult times, and celebrated his successes. Tunde's determination and resilience inspired those around him. He was a testament to the idea that one's past does not define their future. After graduating from high school with top honors, Tunde earned a scholarship to study medicine at a prestigious university. It was a dream come true, a step closer to fulfilling his promise to himself and his mother. As he packed his bags and prepared to leave Ilorin, Margaret held him tightly. "I am so proud of you, Tunde," she said, tears in her eyes. "Go and make your mark on the world." University life was a new adventure for Tunde. He immersed himself in his studies, eager to absorb as much knowledge as he could. He made new friends and found mentors who recognized his potential and passion. Yet, the memory of his mother and the promise he had made to honor her remained his guiding light. Years later, Tunde graduated from the university. After his graduation, Tunde proudly donned his National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) uniform. The NYSC program was a significant milestone, providing young graduates with the opportunity to serve their country and gain invaluable experience. Tunde was posted to a rural village in Oyo State, far from his hometown of Ilorin. Despite the distance, he was eager to begin this new chapter in his life. The village of Iseyin was a place of breathtaking beauty, surrounded by rolling hills and vast farmlands. However, it was also a place in desperate need of medical care. The local clinic was understaffed and poorly equipped, and the villagers often had to travel long distances to receive proper treatment. Tunde saw this as an opportunity to make a real difference. During his service year, Tunde threw himself into his work with dedication and passion. He treated patients with a wide range of ailments, provided health education, and organized community outreach programs. His warm demeanor and genuine concern for the villagers earned him their trust and respect. They often called him Dokita Tunde, with a mix of affection and gratitude. One day, while Tunde was conducting a health seminar, he met a fellow NYSC member named Ayobami. She was a nurse who shared his commitment to improving healthcare in underserved areas. They quickly became friends, bonding over their shared experiences and dreams. Ayobami's kindness and empathy reminded Tunde of his mother, and he found comfort in her presence. As the months passed, Tunde and Ayobami worked tirelessly, side by side, to uplift the health standards of the village. They organized vaccination drives, maternal health workshops, and even a small health fair. The impact of their efforts was evident in the smiles of the villagers and the improvements in their overall health. At the end of his service year, Tunde received a commendation from the NYSC for his outstanding contribution to the community. He felt a deep sense of fulfillment and pride. With the conclusion of his NYSC service, Tunde knew it was time to return home to Ilorin, but there was one important thing he needed to do first. Upon arriving in Ilorin, Tunde went straight to Margaret's house. She greeted him with open arms, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Welcome home, Tunde," she said, hugging him tightly. "I am so proud of you." Tunde smiled and held her hand. "Thank you, Grandma. There's something I need to do. Will you come with me?" Margaret nodded, understanding immediately. Together, they made their way to the small cemetery on the edge of the village. The air was still, and the sun cast a warm glow over the headstones. They worked in silence until they reached Tolulope's grave. Tunde knelt by his mother's headstone, his heart heavy with emotion. He had brought a bouquet of flowers, which he gently placed on the grave. As he did, memories of his mother flooded his mind, her laughter, her warmth, her unwavering love. He felt a mix of sorrow and gratitude. "Hello, Mama," Tunde began, his voice soft. "I did it. I graduated, and I completed my service. I've tried to live a life that would make you proud. I hope you can see me and know that your strength and love have guided me every step of the way." Margaret stood beside him, her eyes filled with tears. She placed a hand on Tunde's shoulder. "Your mother would be so proud of you, Tunde. She loved you more than anything, and you have honored her memory in the best way possible." Tunde nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He stood by his mother's grave for a while, sharing his thoughts and feelings, feeling her presence in the gentle breeze. It was a moment of closure, a way to connect with the past and draw strength for the future. As they left the cemetery, Tunde felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that his journey was far from over. He had a lifetime ahead of him to make a difference, to heal, and to honor the legacy of his mother. And with each step he took, he carried her spirit with him, a beacon of love and strength guiding him forward.